point out in your review that people like AOC and Bernie, and you were a Bernie surrogate and delegate?
Well, I was a delegate twice in 2016 and 2020.
Yeah. So you point out that they actually weren't better than the centrists in pushing Biden.
They weren't. As a matter of fact, Pamela Jayapal, the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, endorsed Biden 2 years before the 2024 general election. Then the next year, it was, among others, AOC and Bernie Sanders. And then, and I think this is the worst part, down to the day that Biden withdrew from the 2024 race, AOC and Bernie Sanders were adamantly stating that he should complete the campaign for 2024 for president. And it was just astonishing to me. And I think it goes to how pervasive this go along to get along with the party hierarchy is. Again, this is an irony. It's kind of, Kate, like we were talking about a couple of minutes ago. In the name of, hey, we've got to hunker down and say that Biden's okay, they actually enabled him or encouraged him to just keep going and not quit until it got even worse. There were fewer and fewer days. Turned out only 107 before Kamala Harris had election day between her declaration of candidacy and when the votes were in. And were way more perceptive about Biden's condition. I mean, 37% in one poll, 37% was all of Democrats who wanted Biden to run for re-election before he announced that he would do it again. So the voters, 2/3 of them basically were saying, don't run Joe, lowercase, don't run Joe. And so it's really this elitist policy. We have these pundits, we have the inner circle of New York Times, Washington Post, the networks, and we have the big money people. And one little anecdote quickly is that when Bernie's forces were at high ebb in 2017, there was the Unity Reform Commission of the DNC. I went to some of those meetings, and the Clinton people the Hillary Clinton folks had like 55%, and Bernie people had 45%. And Jim Zogby, a great progressive leader, had presented at that meeting one resolution after another. We need financial transparency. We need to know how the money is being spent, who it's going to, at what rate, for what purpose. And those resolutions were voted down again and again. Jen O'Malley Dillon was the chair of that Unity Reform Commission. She ran the show. She helped torpedo all of those proposals that were common sense transparency. What happens to her? She becomes deputy chief of staff of the White House. Then she runs the Biden re-election campaign. Then she runs the Harris campaign. Well, her buddies are making out like bandits. You can't raise and spend more than $1 billion with a B in a few months and not just be lining a lot of pockets. So of course they would rather win than lose, but in a financial sense, they never lose.
Right. I wanted to also show a video of Bernie Sanders, who was just on the Flagrant podcast, which is, I guess, a more right-wing platform. And he was asked about Democrats being a threat to democracy. So let's take a listen to what Bernie's response was to that.
I think a lot of voters had is like, they didn't even know if it was her. We didn't even know if Biden was president. We didn't even know if these were her talking points. And we felt that over the last 4 elections, Democrats, we felt that we didn't have a say on who could be president. We talk a lot about the Republicans being autocrats and oligarchs and taking over democracy, but from the Democrat perspective, and I'm a lifelong Democrat, I felt like the Democratic Party completely removed the democratic process from its constituents. And I think they need to have some accountability of that.
No argument here.
I donated for you. I mean, I wanted you to, like, 2016, I was like, this is going to happen. This guy's going to do it. And it felt like they stole it from me. And I'll be honest, it broke my heart when you supported him.
Look, but you have, in the world that I live in, you got a choice. And I mean, a lot of people, including my wife, agree with you. But, you're down to a choice. Is it going to be Hillary Clinton or is it going to be Donald Trump? Not a great choice.
But it ended up being him anyway, so why don't we burn it down?
Well, because it's easy to say burning it down means that children are not going to have, food to eat, that the schools will deteriorate, people will not have health care.
I got it.
And I'm an elected official. I got to represent the people.
That's fair.
And I can't turn my back on.
But then could we not also say, if ostensibly there hasn't been a fair primary for the Democrats since 2008, are they not also a threat to democracy? Yes. We often hear.
Fair enough. That is. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that point.
So I thought that was interesting, because he doesn't argue with the claim that Democrats are a threat to democracy.
It was, I think, very, very, very interesting. A couple points I would make is, first, that when it comes down to, when it is really a binary choice between a Harris and a Trump, I think people who describe themselves on the left and say it doesn't matter, that's completely wrong. And practically, as a practical matter, intended or not, it is elitist. When you get down to a fascistic Republican Party or a Democrat who's going to be in the White House, this is a delusionary strain on the left that's wrong. And we're dealing with, I'm not going to blame the left because it's corporate America that was responsible, but we can't build good analysis and dialectical politics by pretending that the Republican and Democratic parties are the same. The other thing I want to say in response to that video is that when Bernie, who I think is just a wonderful leader on the whole, while I disagree with him on occasion, when he says that these primaries were run by the Democratic Party in ways that did not allow voters to make their choice, in 2024, he was a factor in that problem, because he was an enabler for Biden publicly because he personally liked him and he'd made a calculus. We have to get away from personal loyalty. It's not about Biden, Bernie, or anybody else. I don't care about their own life more than I care about the checker who I know at the supermarket. We have to stop worrying about these individuals and their loyalties and start having real democracy. And that means a fight.
I know a lot of people watching now are very, really feel like either there isn't a significant difference or there is a difference, but we have to burn it down, or they couldn't bring themselves to vote for Harris. I think that there's no question that Trump is worse than Harris. I think that I just can't bring myself to blame people who felt like they couldn't vote for Harris. I think that there was a teeny bit of a chance that Trump was maybe going to be better on certain issues like Russia, Ukraine, maybe even on Israel for the totally incorrect reasons, like because of narcissism or real estate deals. And even I got a little bit excited last week. I thought he was going to maybe actually stick it to Israel a little bit. Again, not because he cares about Palestinians, but out of kind of ego and wanting to discipline Netanyahu. But what I do think is true is that we do have to be honest about this is really not exciting. And I'm sure I'm not going to get a lot of thumbs up or clicks for saying this, but we don't have a viable third party. We don't have a good Democratic Party. I don't know what the answer is right now, except I do think that, certain things that are positive are seeing that people are out on the streets for Palestine. Of course, the policy hasn't changed, but as I often will point out, you don't get the policy changes until you get the shift in public opinion, right? So it's what we're seeing now is necessary but insufficient. But I wanted to actually ask you about, and I wish I had some big, grand plan for moving forward. I think that unfortunately, I don't think that the Democrats learn a lesson. I don't think it's we didn't vote for them because of genocide, and now they're going to know that they can't support genocide anymore. I just don't think that's going to be the takeaway.